It's Wednesday and you're watching The World Today on SABC3. I'm Leanne Mole. Coming up today, as usual, news from around the globe and very interesting interviews today. We'll be having Melinda Shaw, who's the editor of Heat magazine, as well as Fiona Coyne from The Weakest Link, joining us in the studio tonight. So be sure to stay tuned. Let's start off, though, with what has been making news around the world. The oil price is, of course, dominating headlines across the globe. Oil prices have soared to a new record, above $50 a barrel. Well, the latest rally was triggered by Nigerian rebels warning oil companies to shut down production in the Niger Delta before they declare an all-out war. Economists are keeping an ever-watchful eye.
London oil prices hit record highs as worries over supplies compound existing concerns over low US fuel stocks ahead of the winter season. The instability of supplies from Iraq have been made worse by potential supply disruptions from Nigeria and Russia, all factors creating apprehension in the markets. London Brent on the International Petroleum Exchange, the benchmark for European crude imports, set a new record of $46 a barrel, up 67 cents. And during London midday trading, US light crude was just a whisker away from August's all-time peak of $49.40 a barrel.
Let's go now to the Middle East. Iraq. Violence in Iraq continues with yet another car bomb, this time in the northern city of Mosul.
Another day of violence in Iraq was marked by a car bomb that killed 3 members of the Iraqi National Guard and wounded 5 others in the northern city of Mosul. Another 5 people were wounded in a separate bomb attack. West of Baghdad in the city of Ramadi, US forces clashed with Iraqi fighters. Residents say US troops conducted a search of the area, storming a number of buildings, including the post office, the Department of Agriculture and a number of shops. There was no comment from the US military.
Tawhid al-Jihad, which is the militant group led by the alleged al-Qaeda leader in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, has released a video claiming responsibility for 2 car bombs north of Fallujah on Sunday.
The start of a suicide mission, captured on video. A car and a lorry are seen setting off to avenge the death of the spiritual leader of Tawhid al-Jihad, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's militant group, with chilling results. The US refused to say how many Americans were killed or injured. A spokesman said the operation was in retaliation for US raids on women and children all over Iraq and in Fallujah in particular. The attack suggests weeks of airstrikes on their Fallujah stronghold have not affected the group's operational capability.
The aid organization, which employs 2 Italian female hostages, currently being held in Iraq as hostages, have launched a television advert calling for their release.
This advertisement, aired on Italian television, was commissioned by the aid organization Bridge to Baghdad, pushing to secure the release of 2 female employees held hostage in Iraq. They were abducted 3 weeks ago along with 2 Iraqi colleagues. Bridge to Baghdad refuses to give up on the women, organising regular demonstrations and publicity spots. While in Iraq, an Iranian diplomat kidnapped last month has been released. Fareed al-Jahani told reporters his kidnappers had demanded the release of all Iraqi prisoners in Iran, but finally released him when they learned there weren't any.
Meanwhile, the wife of British hostage in Iraq, Kenneth Bigley, is still praying for her husband's safe return.
In her home in Thailand, Sabc Bigley lights incense and prays for her husband. 62-year-old Briton Kenneth Bigley was abducted in Iraq on the 16th of September, along with 2 American colleagues. Both have since been executed. I'm pleading with the group who's holding my husband to please release him. He's a good man. He's the only one who's supporting the whole family. I ask them, please spare my husband's life. I can't live without him. Kenneth Bigley was due to return from Iraq next month to join his wife of 7 years.
There's been no immediate claim of responsibility following the kidnapping in Israel of a producer for the CNN television network. Armed Palestinians kidnapped the Israeli Arab producer from a car in Gaza City on Monday after asking for him by name.
A group of armed kidnappers abducted Riyad Ali at gunpoint in Gaza City. He was riding in a taxi along with CNN correspondent Ben Widerman and a camerawoman. One of the kidnappers pulled out a gun and asked, "Which one of you is Riyad?" They then took him out of the car and drove away. Ali had worked for CNN for 2 years. Officials in the Palestinian Authority say they are trying to discover who abducted Ali and will try to secure his release.
Clashes have erupted in northern West Bank city of Jenin during an Israeli operation to arrest Palestinian militants.
50 armoured military vehicles roll into the West Bank city of Jenin and a curfew is imposed on residents. Israeli soldiers conducted house-to-house searches for wanted militants. Tear gas and rubber bullets were fired into a crowd of Palestinian youths hurling stones. One Hamas activist and his accomplice were arrested and one person injured. Elsewhere, Israeli troops raided the West Bank city of Nablus, clashing with local youngsters. No one was reported injured.
Women are turning out in droves in Afghanistan to register to vote in the presidential elections.
Women in Afghanistan have flocked to take up their voting rights following the lifting of Taliban rule. In scenes unimaginable 3 years ago, when political activity amongst women was harshly punished, 4 million women have registered to vote, representing 40% of the country's population.
And we wish that in our near future, in coming years, there will be the president from women.
And this may be her. Masouda Jalal is Afghan's only woman standing for president. There are fears that others are still too intimidated by tradition to vote, let alone stand for election.
Pakistani security forces have arrested more suspected Islamic militants. It comes a day after they shot dead a key suspect wanted in a failed bid on President Pervez Musharraf's life. Amjad Hussain Farouqi was also suspected of killing American journalist Daniel Pearl. President Musharraf, on a visit to the Netherlands, says it's a serious blow to terrorism.
Pakistani authorities are questioning half a dozen suspects a day after killing militant Amjad Hussain Farouqi. This house in Nawabshah shows evidence of a fierce gun battle. Farouqi was wanted for an assassination attempt against President Musharraf and the killing of US journalist Daniel Pearl.
This was a man who attacked me, so therefore I'm more than happy and I'm very satisfied with our intelligence organizations.
Authorities are now on high alert for possible further attacks by extremists.
India's laws against child labour are being routinely flouted, with 115 million children working in the country.
In a blatant flouting of India's ban on child labour, hundreds of children, driven by hunger and poverty, crush stones for a living in eastern India. The children, mostly aged below 10, spend 8 hours a day breaking stones into gravel. Their hands and feet become blistered and dust leaves many with serious respiratory disorders.
I do this for the money. There is nothing to eat back at home.
Most dream of going to school but can't afford not to work. They earn $15 for a 5-ton load, which can take 3 to 4 weeks to make. The employers make huge profits but go unchecked due to poor law enforcement.
Celebrations have been held to mark the 350th birthday of the world-famous Monument of Love, the Taj Mahal in India.
Children release balloons into the sky above India's Taj Mahal as celebrations begin to mark the monument's 350th anniversary. Actors recreate the romance that blossomed between Emperor Shah Jahan and the nobleman's daughter Mumtaz Mahal. Constructed by the emperor in her memory, the white marble Taj Mahal is considered the world's most famous monument of love. He is said to have consulted experts from the Middle East and Europe as he designed the mausoleum, which took 20,000 people over 22 years to build.
A probe is underway after a bus carrying students and teachers to the Paralympic Games crashed in central Greece. At least 7 people were killed and 24 injured in the accident.
Rescue workers pulled 7 bodies from the coach. Only 10 of the 41 people on board escaped uninjured. Hospital sources said 2 were serious. The school party was on its way to the Paralympic Games. Organisers in Athens said they'd observe a minute's silence in remembrance of the victims. It's thought the bus collided with a lorry travelling in the opposite direction. Last year, 80 people died and around 200 were injured at the same spot, one of the most dangerous on the country's main north-south highway.
Intense investigations are underway after 2 diamonds worth almost 87 million rand in total disappeared from an antique dealer's show at the Paris Louvre Museum. The apparent mid-afternoon robbery took place on Monday. One was a white diamond of 47 carats and the other a blue diamond of 15.74 carats.
It was a daring operation in broad daylight. 2 diamonds worth a total of $13.5 million disappeared from an antiques dealer's show at the Louvre Museum complex. Police say a glass case holding the jewels was forced open.
There was a blue diamond and a white one. They are exceptional.
It appears the display case was not alarmed.
Well, if you haven't heard yet, entrepreneur Richard Branson has launched Virgin Galactic, offering tourist trips into space within 3 years. Let's take another look at that story now.
Space, the final frontier, and for $200,000 you can ride on in. Virgin boss Sir Richard Branson adds to his empire Virgin Galactic, providing the world's first commercial flights into space.
I think it will also bring the dream of space travel for many millions closer to reality.
The Galactic fleet will consist of 5 craft capable of soaring 130 kilometres above the Earth, guaranteeing the 5 passengers on board an experience of weightlessness. The chance to overnight in a space hotel is also on the drawing board. The first flight is scheduled to leave by 2008, so Richard has already secured his seat.
3 million people in Florida in the US are without electricity as Hurricane Jean moves off from the area, leaving a trail of devastation behind.
Roofs were peeled off, power lines snapped and mobile homes were wrecked as Hurricane Jean crossed Florida at the weekend. St. Lucie County bore the brunt with 120-mile-an-hour winds and an 8-foot storm surge. Now residents are picking up the pieces.
Probably going to move because I really don't have much left.
We almost died last night.
Jean was the 4th hurricane in Florida's worst ever hurricane season. It's estimated it's caused between $4 and $8 billion worth of damage.
A record seizure of cocaine in the US has been partly attributed to faster ships that are no longer outrun by drug smugglers. Well, it was revealed on Monday that the US Coast Guard has seized a record 109,000 kilograms of cocaine worth $7.7 billion, and that's just over the past year.
These drug smugglers are trying to make a fast getaway, but the US Coast Guard is now equipped with faster ships. This year, they intercepted a record amount of cocaine worth over $7.7 billion.
And whenever we can seize this volume of cocaine, it makes a difference for the young people of America.
The street value of a gram of cocaine is between $25 and $100.
3 days before a televised debate, US President George W. Bush and Democratic challenger John Kerry have questioned each other's credibility and renewed a running battle on Iraq.
First of all, I'd like to thank you,
Bush and Kerry traded angry words over Iraq.
You cannot lead when people don't know where you stand.
Kerry said the Bush campaign was using scare tactics to divert attention from the situation in Iraq.
I've had one position steady all the way, folks. That I thought we ought to stand up and hold Saddam Hussein accountable, but I thought we ought to do it the right way.
Latest polls suggest Bush is leading the race for the White House.
And a new study shows that the compact disc has at least another 5 years as the most popular music format before online downloads chip away at its dominance. Technology consultancy Jupiter Research says in 2009, European music fans will buy $1 billion worth of music as digital downloads and subscriptions to internet radio services. Well, time now to take a look at our weather forecast for the globe. we'll be back after this short break on The World Today with our People of South Africa slot. Stay tuned for an interview with Fiona Coyne of the SABC3's Weakest Link, as well as Melinda Shaw, editor of Heat magazine. Welcome back to The World Today on SABC3. Time now for our People of South Africa slot. Sharp of mind, quick of tongue. There's no mistaking it's Fiona Coyne of SABC3's Weakest Link game show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Fiona, are you as sadistic as you come across on telly?
No, I'm an extremely sweet person when everything's going my way and nothing's irritating me. I can be as lovely as grass in the shell then, really.
What do you have to do to get onto your right side?
Just agree with everything I say, let me control everything, and then I'm perfectly happy and lovely to live with.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not unlike most people in the world anyway, I'm sure.
Well, exactly. I'm just more outspoken about it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do your friends describe you?
My friends adore me, but they have to, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be my friends anymore, and they'd be easily fired. And I have to admit that the sort of battlefield of my life is littered with bodies of ex-friends. But I think that, again, that's most people, if they're honest. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you ever made anyone cry?
On the show or in life?
Let's look at on the show.
No, I've had someone pass out. I've had someone collapse on the show. And I've had someone fall down. Crying. Yeah, someone's cried, but I think they were just happy to have won. I think that's why they cried. I'm choosing to believe that's why they cried.
Okay. I think I'm more nervous than you are. Your knowledge of wildlife conservation, I mean, you've got a huge interest in wildlife and not only wildlife, but sort of conservation and
yes.
domestic animals as well.
Yeah.
What drives that?
You know, I just believe you cannot be alive and not care about the environment and not care about the impact we have on our surroundings, be that, you know, fauna, flora, because it affects us ultimately. You know, this isn't some sort of bunny hugger, although I am a bunny hugger and proud to be one. It's not some sort of bunny hugger craziness of let's love all the little animals, and it's a reciprocal thing, you know, symbiosis. If we're going to neglect them, it is going to impact on us in the long run. So it's fired from that initially.
And, I mean, you've got vast experience. You actually were in Kenya for a while as well, working for a fund. Can you explain to us
Yes,
what that was like?
which is the main reason I went there. Daphne Sheldrick, the first woman in the world to find out how to hand-rear infant elephants. And she started up to save the infants of so many poached elephants from the 70s in Kenya. And I was very, very lucky and just so happy to be involved with her for 4 years and learn from her and assist her where I could, and learned a huge amount there. So I'm one of the few people now on Earth who actually knows how to hand-raise an infant elephant. But I find that's not a hugely sought-after skill in Cape Town. People aren't, you know, banging my door down for that one.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure not. Has conservation and conservation efforts changed in the past few years, in your view?
You know, to be really honest, I've lost touch with it so badly because one of the drawbacks of being involved in conservation is an almost permanent state of anxiety and depression about what's going on. And although I'm sorry that I've lost contact to a large degree with where my life has gone now, I don't miss that constant anxiety. So I've lost a lot of contact with exactly what's going on, but I think basically it's still money-driven in most parts of the world. Yes.
Your playwright side of things. I know that you've just had your recent play, The Shadrach Affair.
Yes.
Any more plays in the pipeline?
I always say it's the last. Every time I do it, I go, that's the last time, because it's a huge amount of work. But I probably will do it again. You know, I enjoy writing, and touch wood, so far audiences seem to enjoy the plays, so we'll see.
Well, all the best, and we're looking forward to a new season of The Weakest Link as well, and to seeing you on our tellies more and more often.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. Well, Heat magazine will be holding a celebrity auction this evening, and to tell us more about it, I'm joined by Melinda Shaw, who's the editor of Heat. Welcome once again to the show, Melinda.
Thanks for having me, Leanne.
Okay, there are a number of items up for grabs, almost.
Yes.
And I think the one that we want to know the most about is, of course, this item here, which is Charlene Theron's dress.
Charlize
Theron. Goodness, listen to me. I get so excited.
This dress is absolutely... I've been carrying this dress around. I've been the official bodyguard for this dress for the last 3 or 4 months as we've done publicity for this auction. When Charlize was out here in March after winning the Oscar, there was a gala dinner, and various items were auctioned off for charity, for Power in that instance. And then on the spur of the moment, she decided to auction the dress that she was wearing, which you can see in that picture in the magazine. And my publisher bought this dress, which we were all most excited about. We were whooping and cheering at the table. Yes, we've got the dress. Now, I haven't tried it on. The publisher has. Several people in South Africa have worn it now. Tracy McGregor's worn it. Michelle McLean wore it and looked really stunning.
Yeah.
And tonight at the Westcliff, when we re-auctioning this, Corinne de Toy, the new Jane from Igoli, will be modeling the dress for us. We decided to have an auction again because we only paid 70,000 Rand for the dress. So Power got...
Only?
Yes. It's a bargain. It's a $40,000 dress.
Wow.
It's a authentic Ralph Lauren. I think he probably made it for Charlize. She had it on loan. And so we decided we have to auction it for another, in aid of another charity that Charlize is fond of, which happens to be Cotland's Baby Sanctuary.
Right.
Also one really close to our hearts. So I hope some Johannesburg girl will wear a really beautiful dress to a matric farewell.
Well, it has to be a tall girl. I mean, we were holding it up earlier, and it does go on and on forever.
It does. You can take it in, I'm sure, if your dad buys it for you at the auction.
Okay, well, there are a number of other items as well. We've got Jamie Oliver's cookbook, which has been signed by him.
So
a couple of other mentions.
Yes, we have a beanie from Colin Farrell. That's close to my own heart. He was here earlier this year shooting that movie, as you know, Ask the Dust in Cape Town, and he was photographed everywhere with a beanie. Now, I never got to meet him, much to my distress, but we managed to get a beanie out of him. Well, just before he left, he signed a beanie for us, and we've got that. Nicolas Cage, who's just finished shooting a movie in Cape Town, he's just left, I think. He gave us one of his favorite T-shirts. I still haven't seen that. Then we have a guitar from the British band Travis, signed by the whole band, Fran Healy's band. We have Arno Carstens wore a dress on stage once. I don't know if you know that.
With the Springbok Nude Girls?
Yes. For one video, the Supergirl video, and during the Grahamstown Festival, he did a show wearing this really interesting, shiny dress. He says he thinks it has a bit of a Russian feel. It's a very interesting dress.
And I'm sure it's not half as beautiful as this one.
No, but Arno has agreed to model it for us tonight at the Westcliff.
Goodness.
So we'll be seeing Arno in his very own dress.
Oh, fabulous, I think. Okay, celebrities who are going to be there.
Well, as I said, Arno will be there. We've managed to get, I think the other nice thing about this auction is that we've managed to convince South African celebrities to model the items for us. So Corinne, as I said, is modeling the dress. Arno's wearing his own dress. The cookbook, in fact, is going to be presented to us by DJ Fresh. He said he will model a cookbook for us. Colin Moss will be wearing Colin Farrell's beanie. I thought the Colin thing would be quite nice.
Absolutely.
And a variety of other things. We've got Loyiso playing the Travis guitar, and so on and so forth. So we've got 10 items, and it's going to be a fantastic evening. I can't wait.
And it's for such a good cause as well, which is really, really great.
Yes, and it's wonderful. I think South African celebrities are really showing that they care, and putting their money where their mouth is, you know, which is fantastic.
Well, we hope that you raise lots and lots of money, and that it's an absolute bash, and all the best for this evening.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Leanne.
Time now to take a look at the market news from around the globe.
Volvo, the world's second largest truck maker, may make an acquisition in Asia to boost market share as growth in Europe and North America slows in 2005. Volvo's deputy CEO, Lennart Jonsson, told Reuters Television in Singapore that he saw acquisition opportunities as China's truck and construction market looked ready for consolidation. We began asking Mr. Jonsson about Europe, the group's biggest money spinner, and whether Volvo would revise up its European sales target.
I think we need to see the effect of the high oil prices and steel prices, but we are rather optimistic that Europe will have a good year this year. Next year will be hopefully about the same level. It's difficult to say in this difficult surrounding. North America has been very strong, and I think we have to see after the election what will happen.
What, I mean, saying on that theme, what is the key challenge in 2005 as far as you see it?
It is to still be very efficient and serve the customers in a very good way. Try to avoid price increases, which will be difficult because all the oil prices and steel prices, and then continue to develop our products. And we are not only trucks, we are buses, construction equipment, Penta engines, and aerospace engines. So we cover a very large range of products.
What are your expectations out of China? Of course, the construction boom in China has been much reported. How can Volvo, which has a relatively small presence in China, benefit out of that?
We have a large presence in China if you compare to other foreign manufacturers, but compared to all the Chinese, of course. But we will grow in China, and this stop in construction market it's normal things happen. So when the market is booming, and then there is recovery. So we are not worried about China long term at all. We will grow our business there.
How do you plan to grow your business in China? Could it be through an acquisition?
Yeah, that could be via an acquisition, but we are already working together with partners on the bus side and on the truck side, and we have our own complete company on construction equipment in China, and in Penta we also work with a partner. So we are there with all product groups.
How would you see it being the most successful or the most prudent way to grow your business in China? How would you go ahead a possible acquisition?
Yeah, you know, I like when people come and offer me good deals, so I think I sit waiting, and I think organic growth is for us very important, but there will be opportunities because the Chinese truck and construction market needs to be consolidated. Whether that happens quickly or take a couple of years, nobody knows.
Would you say that China is an integral part of your strategy in 2005?
Absolutely. As is Singapore. It's a very important market in Southeast Asia, where we have Indonesia and we have Malaysia, Thailand, and many other markets which are very important, and where we have been for many years. Us in China, we have actually been in China for many years also.
A lot of people expect a slowdown in the construction side in China. Of course, Beijing is doing all it can to perhaps reduce the effect of a bubble economy appearing in China. What is your assessment of the pace of growth in China's economy?
I think it was very high in the beginning of the year, and it was too high, and everybody knew that it would come down, and hopefully it will be stabilized on a more and have a more stable growth, and that is what we are expecting and planning for.
German business confidence dipped only slightly in September despite the renewed surge in oil prices. The respected IFO Business Climate Index ticked down to 95.2 from 95.3 in August, pointing to a continuing modest upturn in Europe's largest economy. IFO economist Klaus Abberger, who oversees the compilation of the survey, sees reason for some cautious optimism.
But we had very optimistic expectations at the beginning of this year, and now expectation and assessment of the current situation is converging at a slightly optimistic level.
However, Abberger dismissed the idea the survey's surprising resilience may indicate a pickup in the domestic economy, something most economists agree is vital to offset any weakening in foreign demand for German goods. The UK-based maker of ready-mix concrete, RMC, has agreed to the terms of a takeover from Mexican cement supplier Cemex. In a deal worth £2.3 billion, Cemex is offering RMC shareholders 855 pence per share in cash. That's 43% above the closing price on Friday. The news of the hefty premium sent RMC shares higher by some 42% on Monday as investors welcome the tie-up, which creates an enterprise value of around $5.8 billion.
Business now, the Dow closing below 10,000 as oil prices flirt with $50 a barrel. The Dow falling 58 points, the Nasdaq losing 19. Oil prices were the talk of Wall Street today as they edged higher again. Concerns about political instability in Nigeria, the latest concern. That country is the #5 OPEC producer. Those higher oil prices are an increasing worry for corporate earnings. One sector that is already taking a big hit, airlines. Shares of airlines, for example, Delta, fell because of those oil price jitters. Delta stock dropped about 10%. Discount airlines not immune. A JP Morgan analyst cut his rating on low-cost carriers, including JetBlue and AirTran, blaming those rising oil prices. Shares of both those companies slid on the news. Also weighing on the markets, chip stocks. They were down after Morgan Stanley downgraded the sector. Shares of both Intel and Applied Materials fell modestly. The biggest percentage loser here at the New York Stock Exchange was Tommy Hilfiger. The clothing maker said a federal grand jury subpoenaed documents related to commissions paid to a subsidiary. Now, analysts say the probe may involve tax breaks. Shares of Tommy Hilfiger plunging about 22%. We are just a couple of days away from the first presidential debate. For more on what Wall Street is watching, let's go to John Decker in Washington.
Tuesday is a light day on the economic front as the only new indicator that will be released is the September consumer confidence number. Wall Street will also await new earnings reports from MS Communications and the Pepsi Bottling Group. And with the first presidential debate just 2 days away, both President Bush and Senator Kerry will continue their debate preparations and remain on a light public schedule.
Oil prices are soaring to 21-year highs, but that may still not be enough to put a major dent in global growth, economists say. The price of a barrel of crude oil started the week on a tear, jumping close to $50 a barrel in New York as trouble brews in the oil fields of Nigeria. Iraqi exports remain under high threat, and Yukos, Russia's oil giant, curtails exports as it struggles with a huge tax bill. Traders are fearing the worst when it comes to global supply disruptions, warns Ira Eckstein, energy trader for Area International Trading Corp.
What's going on? I don't really think it's that overblown right now. There's not enough oil here, that people are really concerned.
Those fears have sharply driven up energy costs, hitting consumer wallets and corporate balance sheets. But the impact may be short-lived, says Goldman Sachs economist Bill Dudley.
I don't think that Wall Street is pricing in oil quite that high. If you look at the forward prices for oil, they're quite a bit lower. And if you look at the valuation of energy producers, they're definitely not being priced as if oil is going to stay at $50 a barrel.
And that should give the economy some breathing room, say analysts, and lend some credibility to the Federal Reserve. Earlier this year, Fed policymakers called record-high oil prices, quote, transitory, and at its last meeting said the economy was back on track after sky-high oil prices caused a summer slowdown. But despite all the optimism, Wall Street is keeping a close eye on how consumers and businesses react if forecasts are wrong.
The reason why people are very sensitive to this point, though, is almost all recessions in the past 30 years have been preceded by oil price shocks. And so people always wonder, well, maybe oil prices actually prove to be more damaging to the economy than, say, standard econometric models might presume.
And that's why economists and oil traders agree it's not just how high the price of oil goes that determines its economic impact, but also how long it stays there.
And time for a quick break on The World Today. Stay with us because we'll be back with showbiz news and news from the African continent. Welcome back. We kick off our entertainment section now with the latest celebrity news from Hollywood and beyond.
Kevin Costner has gotten hitched. The actor-director married his girlfriend, Christine Baumgartner, in Colorado over the weekend. It's the first marriage for the 30-year-old Baumgartner and the second for Costner. According to publicists for the pair, the happy couple plan to honeymoon in Scotland. Good news for movie fans who enjoyed The Lord of the Rings. An extended version of the final installment is headed to DVD and will be released with a whopping 50 minutes of extra footage. The 4-disc version of The Return of the King will also include a new musical score, as well as a previously unseen cameo of director Peter Jackson. Look for the set to hit stores in mid-December. Elsewhere, a remarkable windfall for the Olsen twins. The pair have cut a 10-year video distribution deal that calls for an advance payout of more than $10 million. So far, the Mary-Kate and Ashley home video franchise has grossed about $1 billion worldwide. In fact, the twins are already thought to be worth as much as $150 million each. And finally, some candid words from Bob Dylan about his life story. The veteran musician has talked about his upcoming autobiography, saying he did not enjoy the 3-year writing process. Dylan also says he doesn't understand why he was seen as the conscience of a generation and that many people misinterpreted his lyrics.
Waiting on the last train. Some court action news in the entertainment world. Legendary Wall of Sound record producer Phil Spector has been formally charged with the murder of actress Lana Clarkson. Well, she was found dead in his foyer, but he says it was suicide.
Legendary Wall of Sound record producer Phil Spector has been indicted on a charge that he murdered actress Lana Clarkson, who was found shot to death at her home 19 months ago. In a press conference with his attorney following the announcement of the indictment, Spector maintained his innocence and claimed, in fact, that he was a victim.
That no crime was committed at my home on February 3rd, 2003, and the public will find that out as well, and that this district attorney is pursuing a personal vendetta without evidence. If not, why will he not let me have a preliminary hearing guaranteed me under a California Constitution? Instead, he secretly, as fascists would, went to a secret grand jury to seek and get an indictment. Why? Is anyone about to flee the jurisdiction? The only one involved in this case I know who is seeking to flee the jurisdiction is the district attorney himself. I know because he longs to get on an airplane to Sacramento to become the Attorney General of California.
Police found the 40-year-old Clarkson, star of such B-movies as The Barbarian Queen and Amazon Women on the Moon, shot dead in the foyer of Spector's home. Spector, who produced songs for the Beatles and for Ike and Tina Turner, has claimed that Clarkson killed herself by putting a gun in her mouth and firing it. But police said that an extensive investigation had shown that he had shot her.
Actors Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law both attended the UK premiere of their latest film, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, at the Empire Cinema in London's West End. Paltrow was attending her first London premiere since the birth of her baby daughter, Apple, but without her husband, Coldplay singer Chris Martin. Sky Captain tells the story of how Chronicle reporter Polly Perkins, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, along with ace aviator Sky Captain, that's Jude Law, investigate the disappearance of a number of famous scientists.
They've come back for the generators.
Who is this guy?
You okay? Great.
You don't look so good.
Pull up! Go! I see it! You know, if there's ever a time to do a film like this, a fun action adventure with a kind of romantic heart, this is it, because the period is so wonderful and it looked so amazing, so I jumped on board.
He wrote a great script as well. It wasn't just the video. The script was witty, and the relationship between Polly and Joe, the characters we play, it was just there on the page.
What is it?
It's a mobile airstrip. Dex had a hand in designing it. It's kind of a secret. You can keep a secret, can't you, Polly?
Yeah, I can keep a secret.
Well, with a piece like this, yeah, I told everyone what to do. With a film like this, before we had a deal with Paramount, it meant pulling favors basically. And at that time, because Kerry was a first-time director, we were I suppose, trying to help him realize his visual dream, and at the same time trying to make it a comfortable place for us to work.
I mean, it's been a great experience, and now I'm concentrating more on producing TV stuff, because I can do that here in London. It's easy for me to do that from home. But I don't think I'd do something of this size again. I think, you know, this is a massive film. But I should go and say hello to them, actually.
I mean, Dex.
Look, whatever you do, don't shoot. You shot it, didn't you?
Yes.
Listen, Cap, the signal's coming from one of those machines. You've got to keep them in one piece. Which machine is it, Dex? There's no way of telling. You could be any one of them.
I think I found it, Dex.
Quite possibly, especially for a film of this nature, where there's lots of extraordinary locations, and it's in essence a really action and adventure-oriented piece. Especially because a director is free to kind of enhance the look of it however he wants to, and to really realize a fuller vision. But I think there'll always be, you know, regular movies made the good old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Joseph Sullivan. I was sure you'd be dead by now.
It's good to see you too, Frankie.
This had better be important, or one of us is in trouble.
It's important.
What is that?
You be nice. Commander Cook, meet Polly Perkins.
Polly Perkins. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure to finally meet the competition.
A film about Iraqi children victims of war, Turtles Can Fly, scoops top honors at the San Sebastian Film Festival. Turtles Can Fly was the last film to be presented in competition at San Sebastian. It's set in a Kurdish refugee camp in northern Iraq on the eve of the US-led invasion to topple former dictator Saddam Hussein. Among the other decorated nominees were Iranian-born Bahman Gobadi, who dedicated his award to his actors, acknowledging that it's the first prize for a film for Iraq, for the Kurds of Iraq, and it's the first Iran-Iraq co-production.
And now, in Espanol, Guinese, and English, the Concha de Plata a la Mejor Director a Chu Xing Le for Letter from an Unknown Woman.
And finally, a look at the latest in video games and related technology being showcased at the annual Tokyo Game Show.
An exhibition showcasing the latest in video games and related technology has started in Tokyo. More than 500 new products from 117 companies were on display at the three-day event. One of the highlights of the Tokyo Game Show 2004 is a video game console made by Sony, which is due to hit the Japanese market later this year. The handheld PlayStation Portable, which is only just under 3 centimeters thick and weighs 900 grams, can be used to play games either alone or with other users connected through wireless. 22 different games have been adapted for use with the console, which can also be used to watch movies and listen to music. Nintendo is not participating in the show, but is also set to release the Nintendo DS handheld game console in December. The gadget features 2 liquid crystal displays, a touch-sensitive screen and communication software, which enables up to 16 people to exchange text and visual information. For Sony Computer Entertainment Incorporated, the vice president says, "To put it plainly, what we have done is taken a high-quality 3D video game player, PlayStation, and made it portable so that people like to take it wherever they want. What we are trying to do is to create a new sort of lifestyle where you can play games wherever, whenever, and with whomever you want." As game maker giants concentrated on making their products more compact by consolidating everything in the console, some companies did away altogether with the idea of handheld controls. A sensor under the video screen tuned in to pick up the hand gestures operating one game, while other game consoles were replaced by a drum and drumstick where the user beats out orders. Game show organisers expect about 150,000 people to visit the three-day show. A record 111 companies participated in last year's show, which drew over 150,000 visitors, a record high.
And from Bollywood starlets to intrepid explorers and colonial polo players, India has finally conquered the catwalks in Milan during the city's Fashion Week. Well, locals and tourists have enjoyed their annual whaling experience during South Africa's peak whale season. The festival off the coast of Hermanus is widely considered to be the best place in the world to be when you want to see these oceanic mammals.
Thousands of locals and tourists alike turned up at the sleepy coastal town of Hermanus the past weekend for a most stimulating and exhilarating experience as peak whale season hit the location, approximately 1 hour's drive from Cape Town. The world's only whale crier, Wilson Salukazana, resides in Hermanus and patrols the streets of the town, blowing his kelp horn to alert everyone to the whereabouts of the whales. He indicates where the whales have been spotted on the rocky coastline with different horn codes. Between grandiose mountains and sapphire sea lies Harmanus, a spectacular natural beauty and regarded as the best whale watching site globally. The tranquil and pleasant setting of the peak season virtually guarantees sightings on a daily basis.
And I could see the big whales, I think 3 of them, and I saw the one of the small one and one of the big one. Yeah, they're jumping, and I saw that their tail as well. It was quite nice. Yeah.
Whales can lift their entire bodies out of the water in massive, graceful leaps, usually 3 to 5 times in succession, known as breaching. A spectacular sight for onlookers, experts are still not certain if this is an act of exuberance or an aggressive display.
Who's telling that animal to jump out of the water? Because now we are all staring at him. Because that's why some are throwing us so.
For some, it was a first-time experience, while others have been coming year after year. Southern right whale is so named because it is considered to be the right whale to catch. The southern right can be distinguished from other whales by the V-shaped blow and the collocysts that appear around its head, which are commonly mistaken for barnacles. The southern right whales are the stars of the annual festival, which sees the cliff tops around the bay packed with spectators as the creatures covert and leap within easy view. Between June and December, before leaving for the Antarctic, the southern right whales come to mate and a year later to calve.
An Italian grandfather has finally moved in with his new adoptive family. It's a rather special move, as he was the one who placed an advert in a newspaper describing himself as a grandfather au pair.
An Italian grandfather has finally moved in with his new family after placing an advert in the newspaper describing himself as none other than a grandfather au pair. Life for 80-year-old retired school teacher Giorgi Angelezzi will never be the same now that the Riva family has decided to adopt him. Tired of being alone, widow Angelezzi placed an ad in the local newspaper to try and find a family who would take care of him. The response to his appeal was astounding, with replies coming in from as far as New Zealand, Canada and Britain. But Mr. Angelezzi finally decided on the Riva family, who live near Bergamo, northeast of Milan. The Polish-born Marlena Riva and her Italian husband Elio have happily taken Georgi in. Mrs. Riva's family still live in Poland, and Mr. Riva lost both his parents and a brother in quick succession. Despite having 2 children aged 18 and 16 years old, they both feel in need of a bubble or a granddad close at hand. Angelozzi had lived alone outside Rome with 7 cats since his wife died in 1992. That's at least until he took up the unprecedented step of putting himself up for adoption last month. He says this sweet woman sent a letter signed by everyone in the family, 4 signatures to show that everyone agreed, and she even included photos. How much sweeter do you want someone to be? Well, the former classics teacher had told potential families that he would contribute 500 euros a month to expenses, but the Riva family said what they really want is a grandfather. Today, 1 in 5 Italians is over the age of 65, and almost half of them live alone, partly because of the more mobile lifestyle of the younger generation.
And we end off this section of the program with a taste of wine in Germany. The end of summer is seeing the start of wine harvesting.
German wine owners leap into action, picking their grapes for wine production in the largest wine-producing regions as the official wine harvesting season got underway. Winegoers are expecting a good wine quality with stable prices this year. The owner of the Gering vineyard, Theo Gering, says that after the record heat last year, this year's more changeable summer climate should provide a good quality grape. Gering's vineyard specializes in early Burgundy, a deep red wine which faces an additional onslaught from insects after last year's summer produced an increase in wasp population. The wasps attack the individual berries of the red wine varieties. The measurements he took from the grapes for sugar and residual sugar content indicated that 2004 was going to have a good year for him though. The wine-picking season in Germany doesn't finish until the end of October, when the late varieties have also been harvested. Theo Geering says, "Last summer was a picture book summer, but this year the summer had more changeable and varied weather conditions. That is what we like to have in winter actually, as it means we get enough rain and cold nights for the inclusion of the flavouring substances. We are very happy with this year. We have had an average year. That is pleasant for us wine growers, for it means we can produce the whole product range, from the simple wines to the very high-quality wines." He goes on to say, "Due to the heat last year, we had an increase in wasp population, and they attacked the berries. Because of this, we had to harvest the red wine grapes earlier in order to have a healthy grape crop. It is important to have healthy grapes for the red wine varieties so that the wine has enough color. Well, in any case, it'll be a couple of weeks or even a couple of months yet until this vintage is ready for drinking."
And now we take a look at news from the African continent. We start off in Nigeria, where Nigeria's Central Trade Unions Group has given the government 2 weeks to reverse a recent fuel price hike or face stay-at-home action. The Nigeria Labour Congress decision is in protest against last week's 25% increase in the prices of petroleum products in the oil-rich West African country. Well, still in the country, staff of the collapsed Nigerian Airways have protested outside its headquarters in Lagos. However, reports say the government is preparing to announce a deal with the Virgin Group to create a new national airline. Police had to surround the Nigerian Airways office at Murtala Mohammed International Airport. The protesters include sacked employees and pensioners of the airline. Nigeria Airways was liquidated last year amid debts estimated at 420 million rand. Moving to Sudan now, where the Foreign Minister Mustafa Osman Ismail has come out in support of proposed autonomy for the troubled region of Darfur. The western part of the country has been the scene of violent clashes between Arab nomads and African villagers for years now. Millions of people have been displaced and tens of thousands killed.
A top Sudanese official has praised the idea of transforming war-torn Sudan's government into a federal system. Sudan's Foreign Minister Dr. Mustafa Osman Ismail made the comments.
I personally believe that yes, we need a sort of federal system, which we already started, but we need to give it, to strengthen it, that the people from Darfur state, they should have the right to have a parliament, to have a governor, to have a government, to be elected by the people of Darfur in a federal system that should be imply all over Sudan.
He says a federal system along the lines of Germany, Nigeria, the United States or Canada would help the Northeast African nation better cope with its vast size and ethnic and religious diversity. During a visit to Darfur, UN High Commissioner for Refugees Ruud Lubbers said that Sudan would have to grant its Darfur region autonomy.
Put sanctions on oil. What's going to happen? The people of Darfur will be affected. People in other parts of the Sudan will be affected. Who is going to be responsible for this? So everybody should think twice before put any economic sanctions on the Sudan. And why sanction? If the government is ready to cooperate and to coordinate, why is sanctions?
The crisis has forced 1.4 million people from their homes and killed about 50,000. The United Nations calls Darfur the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Khartoum armed militia known as Janjaweed to try to quell an uprising in the area. Earlier last year, rebels began an uprising in Darfur after years of skirmishes between African farmers and Arab nomads.
There is no massive rapes. You can get one case 2 cases or 3 cases. The security and the judiciary system, they are working in order to punish them.
The United Nations Security Council recently passed a resolution calling for more African Union peacekeeping troops to be sent to Darfur to serve as a bulwark against abuse in Darfur. The Security Council could impose sanctions on Sudan if ambassadors feel Khartoum has not done enough to quash the Janjaweed and abuse. Ismail said any imposition of sanctions on Sudan's oil industry would be a fatal mistake.
World Vision International says Uganda's been widely praised for its fight against HIV/AIDS, but the conflict in the north of the country is threatening its success. The aid agency says HIV/AIDS is twice as common in the war-torn north of Uganda as in the rest of the country. The Lord's Resistance Army rebels often abduct boys to become fighters and girls as sex slaves. Doctors say about half the girls who escape from the rebels are found to be HIV positive. World Vision says healthcare facilities in the north have virtually collapsed. In Botswana, labour unrest is still simmering. Mine workers have threatened another round of industrial action if diamond producer Debswana does not reinstate employees fired for participating in a strike that ended 3 weeks ago. The strike by members of the Botswana Mine Workers Union, the BWMU, was called off after a salary hike offer by the company. However, the BMWU is demanding the reinstatement of union bosses and other support staff singled out as ringleaders. The union says about 500 workers lost their jobs over strike action against the company, which is jointly owned by De Beers and the Botswana government. Well, two rivals, Spanish construction group ACS Dragados and Franco-Canadian-led consortium, are vying for the right to build a high-speed rail link in South Africa. That's ahead of the 2010 Soccer World Cup finals. More than 7 billion rand is the Gauteng project, and that'll link Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Johannesburg International Airport. A decision on which of the rival consortia will be the preferred bidder is likely to be made at the end of November. Time to take a quick break here on The World Today. Stay with us because we will be back with more international news.
The only way anyone could survive after the Big Death is doing what was necessary.
You're all alone. That's the message I want you to take back to your friends.
Daniel's just a name so far, Curdy. Sims was there. We deal with that, and then we'll see.
You sound like a man ready to go to war.
On the Vengeance Trail in Jeremiah, Friday after the movie.
And we start off with the oil price story once again. Oil prices soared to a new record above $50 a barrel. That's as uncertainties over Nigerian output heightened worries of a severe supply disruption ahead of winter. US light crude jumped 71 cents to $50.35 a barrel. That's the highest level recorded in the 21-year history of the crude futures on the New York Mercantile Exchange. Well, the surge in prices knocked Asian stocks lower. Also sent the Japanese 10-year bond yield to a 6-month high and pushed the yen to a 6-week low against the dollar. Oil's latest rally was triggered, of course, by the Nigerian rebels warning oil companies to shut down production in the Niger Delta before they declare an all-out war. A day before a televised debate, US President George W. Bush and Democratic challenger John Kerry have questioned each other's credibility as well as renewing a running battle on Iraq. Bush and Kerry traded angry words over the Middle East. Kerry said the Bush campaign was using scare tactics to divert attention away from the situation in Iraq, while the latest polls suggest Bush is leading the race for the White House.
US President George W. Bush says his Democratic rival John Kerry had shifted his positions on Iraq so many times he called himself a debate himself.
He voted for the use of force in Iraq and didn't vote to fund the troops. He complained that we're not spending enough money to help in the reconstruction in Iraq, and now he's saying we're spending too much. He said it was the right decision to go into Iraq. Now he calls it the wrong war. probably could spend 90 minutes debating himself. You cannot lead when people don't know where you stand. In order to make sure America's a safer place, in order to make sure America's safer, the president must speak clearly and mean what he says.
The president's ridicule of the Massachusetts senator came as Kerry has been hammering him daily on Iraq, accusing him of misleading the chaotic aftermath of the 2003 invasion and giving overly optimistic assessments of the conditions there.
As your position or their position, I've had one position steady all the way, folks, that I thought we ought to stand up and hold Saddam Hussein accountable, but I thought we ought to do it the right way. And doing it the right way means having the patience and the maturity to bring allies to our side, to go through diplomacy, to recognize that the United States of America is strongest when we are standing with the rest of the world in a legitimate cause. And that is what we need to do.
The first debate to be held in Florida will focus on foreign affairs.
Meanwhile, it's Bush versus Kerry tomorrow, and they say history repeats itself. Well, what history does show is the importance of winning the presidential debates.
The fight for the White House comes around every 4 years, but the televised debate as a means of securing it began in 1960, when then Vice President Richard Nixon took on his opponent, the youthful and television-friendly John F. Kennedy.
We're second in time because with destiny. I think our generation of Americans has the same rendezvous. The question now is, can freedom be maintained under the most severe attack it has ever known? I think it can be. And I think in the final analysis, it depends upon what we do here. I think it's time America started moving again.
And now the opening statement by Vice President Richard M. Nixon.
Smith, Senator Kennedy. The things that Senator Kennedy has said, many of us can agree with. There is no question but that we cannot discuss our internal affairs in the United States without recognizing that they have a tremendous bearing on our international position.
Bob Schaefer is the CBS presenter of Face the Nation and the presidential debate moderator.
These incidents have an enormous impact on the debates. The people who listened to the debate between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy in 1960, a survey showed that they thought Richard Nixon won. The people who watched them on television concluded that Kennedy won and won going away because of his smooth, cool, and confident manner. Ronald Reagan understood that. Ronald Reagan understood, being a movie actor as he was, that it's not always just what you say, but how you say it and how you look when you say it.
In 1984, former President Ronald Reagan drew a hearty laugh from the audience when he was faced with the rather tough question of being too old to be president.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
The coming Bush-Kerry debates, however, will be somewhat different. To protect themselves from any unforeseen hiccups, both parties have agreed to a 32-page memorandum of understanding. The memorandum specifies a long list of rules and regulations that have to be abided by. Unlike other debates, this series has been dogged by demands and requests by each candidate in an effort to avoid past gaffes. For example, Senator Kerry wanted the temperature in the room kept below 70 degrees Fahrenheit to avoid suffering the same fate as Richard Nixon, who looked sweaty compared to John F. Kennedy. Both candidates settled on an appropriate temperature. One rule: candidates are not allowed to roam on stage. This demand imposed by the Bush-Cheney campaign to avoid a repeat of 2000, when Vice President Gore left his place at the podium to stand next to Bush. Regardless of the strict rules, public interest is expected to peak at the first debate when it goes to air. Veteran CBS newsman Bob Schaefer agrees that the debates are significant for those who haven't yet made up their minds who they're going to be voting for, Bush or Kerry. Remember, this is the first debate in a series of debates between the two, and they will continue over the next several weeks, leading up to the November 2nd elections.
It's a tragedy that the candidates have choreographed this debate like a ballet. There are so many rules and so many restrictions that it's more like a joint press conference than a debate. The candidates can't even question one another in this debate. So what you might get is a series of statements rather than a give and take which tests the mettle of the two candidates.
What's your philosophy and what's your position on issues? But can you get things done? And I believe I can.
I think it's come down to the fact that they are now the single most important event in these debates. It is the first time that Americans get to see the candidates side by side and sort of make an evaluation. I think this campaign may well hinge on what happens in these debates.
Still in America, the U.S. Coast Guard is showing off a record year in cocaine seizures. Most of the boats were en route from South America to the North American coastline, where the drugs are then distributed in the United States and sometimes Canada. The U.S. is widely seen as South America's largest market.